Hello and welcome to SymphonyAI's Workflow Cafe. My name's Helen May. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer at SymphonyAI, and I'm joined today with Stephen Mann. Stephen Mann is the Principal and Content Director of ITSM.tools. He's a frequent blogger, a writer, and basically a presenter on all things IT service management. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, I can find out all these things about you on the internet. Everything's there. But go on, let's start with quick fire questions, 3 of them. Tell me something that I can't find on LinkedIn about you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be, and it'd definitely be the thing that my wife mentioned before anything else, is that I have far too many vinyl records, LPs. It's a collection that exploded during lockdown, and yeah, I've managed to slow that down, but there's still too many, and I need to move some on if people want to help me out. Oh, and the other thing is that I've not been able to play them for the last 2 weeks because my hand lost a fight with a food blender blade. Oh. And yeah, so yeah, 2 for the price of 1 there.
So I was going to say with your records, that was part of your hunter and gathering, but I guess you're not doing much hunting at the moment if you've hurt your hand.
Everything's left-handed at the moment, which if I was left-handed, that'd be fine. But as I'm not, it's a bit of a pain to say the least.
So my next question is, well, because we're here to talk about AI and enterprise service management, when was the last time you used AI and what did you use it for?
Yeah, well, I think we need to split this into what I would call knowingly using it and not knowingly or unknowingly using it. And the one that comes to mind from a knowingly perspective is because I've not been able to play the vinyl while I'm working, I've been using Spotify. There's an AI DJ. Sadly, what I didn't think about was that I've got young kids, and so there's a lot of music that I wouldn't listen to, or even soothing sounds that I wouldn't listen to. But Spotify thinks it's some of my favorite music. So the AI DJ was feeding me a lot of stuff that wasn't the 80s music or electronic music and some more recent music that I'd normally listen to. I mean, unknowingly, and I'm just looking at my phone. I mean, I imagine there's AI at work on my phone all of the time. Or as I sit here working, when I use Grammarly to make me sound a little bit more intelligent than I actually am, I imagine AI is working in the background to sweeten things up there.
It is quite amazing, isn't it, how much AI is around us and where it learns from. So you're listening to Big Fish, Little Fish and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, and then there's all those other things that we're just not quite so aware of that are happening. And then my last kind of quick fire question is, because we're talking about enterprise service management, what's your credibility? Why should the audience listen to you about it?
Well, it's up to them to make the decision. But in terms of trying to sell myself a little here, I've been in the ITSM space for, well, over 2 decades now. I used to have a proper job. I was a practitioner and actually did ITSM for a living. I've been a consultant, so I've helped others with IT service management. I've been an industry analyst a few times. I've also been in ITSM tool vendor marketing. Now I write and share content, sometimes via ITSM.tools, the website, related to IT service management, and probably going back to, I think 2015 was about the time when you started writing a lot on enterprise service management. I mean, the first discussions I had, I think, were back in 2008. So what's that, 16 years ago? So it's been around a while. So I've seen it change in the same way I've seen IT service management change over the last decade to 2 decades. So, you know, I'd like to think I've got a good view from a number of different perspectives of what's happening in the ITSM world, but also how that's translated into enterprise service management.
So what does enterprise service management actually mean to you? Because it's one of those terms which we bandy around and sometimes we don't define it very well.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot you can say about enterprise service management. So I think I first crafted a definition for something I wrote probably 10 years ago. And back then, and I think the definition still gets used now, it's something along the lines of it's the extension of IT service management capabilities to other business functions to improve services, productivity, experiences, and ultimately outcomes. So it's sharing what we've done for, well, over 30 years in the IT service management world. But it continues to morph. I mean, I mentioned 2008 a moment ago, and back then, enterprise service management was very much lifting those ITSM capabilities. Well, most likely the ITSM tool from IT into HR or into facilities. And it was very much a forced fit. And it was good, you know, it allowed those business functions to do things differently to how they were doing things, very much leveraging the automation capabilities and the reporting capabilities, hopefully reducing costs, speeding up transactions, those sorts of things. But I think one of the things we have to be very wary of is that when we talk about enterprise service management, there's a couple of things that can either be scary or limiting. So the name itself is a good place to start. The enterprise service management, it makes it sound as though it's IT service management for the enterprise, but the reality is that it isn't. The things that are normally shared often relate to what we see in an IT service desk. So, you know, incidents, service request, self-service, maybe problem, maybe a bit of change, maybe a bit of asset management as well. So it's a limited subset, but even bigger than that is those organizations that are willingly taking enterprise service management on board aren't necessarily looking for service management, let alone IT service management. So if we go back to the global pandemic, now I was using phrases like enterprise service management is a ready-built platform for digital transformation. And then you get into the space of things like digital enablement or workflow automation or work optimization. And for me, while we continue to call it enterprise service management in IT, I think the reality is if you're trying to sell it to other business functions, you want to be using their language, not your language. And enterprise service management is probably going to turn a lot of people off. And in doing that, you might also stop to think about how you want to deploy enterprise service management. Again, this is purely my terminology. You won't find it in any other places, or if you do, I've probably written it for someone. That there's a difference between tactical enterprise service management and strategic enterprise service management. And the tactical is very much going back to 2008, where you just do a lift and drop. You probably do it once, whereas strategic, as the name suggests, is a more holistic approach to hopefully facilitating all the internal service provider organizations within the enterprise, or at least those that are amenable to taking on board that work optimization that enterprise service management can bring. And in many ways, a lot of it has to do with selling the benefits of enterprise service management. That, as I said earlier, you know, it's not ITSM for the enterprise because this is going to sound silly, but if you're trying to say you would benefit from enterprise service management, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you start to talk about better service experiences or more consistent outcomes or improved processes or improved employee productivity, greater speed, cost reductions, you know, all of these things that are likely pertinent to other business functions, you're going to get a lot more traction than you would do by saying, well, this is incident management, it's really great and we've used it for years. I mean, incident, we get into the whole terminology thing then, you know, incident in HR is probably a lot more serious than an incident in IT. Well,
very much so, yeah.
Outside of major incidents. So I should have warned people, I just keep on talking, so I'll zip it for now.
There's no reason though. No, I think there's a lot in there to unpick. And, as you say, the language is a really important thing. And using that term, enterprise service management, it feels like a big thing in my mouth to say, enterprise service management. And really, as you say, no one's interested in enterprise service management. But all of those things that you mentioned on the strategic side about, process and more efficiency and reduced cost of ownership and all those kind of things are things that we talk about in ITSM, and it's just applying those to other parts of the business, whether it's HR, whether it's facilities, or even like the legal part of the company. All of those will benefit from those things, and I see it as more as that kind of process side and the workflow, but just expanding that beyond the IT, because everyone needs process and workflow, needs it in there. So that's kind of the enterprise service management part. What about Copilot within enterprise service management? How does that kind of fit in, and how can you exploit Copilots? It's the in thing, AI and Copilots, everyone's talking about it. How can we exploit that within enterprise service management, which I'm still going to use that term, even though I say it's a bit of a mouthful.
You have to. It's the term that we use within IT. Whether you're trying to talk to a peer about it, or whether you're trying to attract people to your website using SEO, if you use terms like employee enablement, you're going to have a disconnect, or people are going to miss you completely. So I think, unfortunately, we do have to continue with enterprise service management, at least for the foreseeable future. In terms of tying in Copilots to enterprise service management, for me, it's just that continued extension, that there are a lot of opportunities to use Copilots in IT service management or wider IT scenarios. But I do think we need to be very careful about how we use them. We need to appreciate that there are different use cases, and those use cases can, start off at quite a high level. So you can have employee or end user focused Copilots that can be tied into self-help. Whether that's pulling up knowledge articles or allowing people to engage with workflows, or invoking automation. But you can also have the Copilots that are focused on IT employees to allow them to work smarter, not harder, to steal that phrase. And, it can be to do with work intake or prioritization, or pulling up the relevant information again, or even things like creating new or updating knowledge articles. So you've got those two, but then you've got the third type of Copilot that's more aligned with the needs of, in this case, IT leadership. And we get into the insights and the improvement opportunities that can come from data-driven decision making. And whether it's to do with forecasting, or whether it's to do with strategy making, or even dealing with major incidents or crises, the Copilots can facilitate the work we do as people within processes. But it is important to make sure that we're not trying to do the proverbial, whether it's a square peg in a round hole, or trying to hammer a screw into the wall, that we are very much focused on what we want to achieve, and then working backwards to find out what can we use to help achieve that. And one of the things that's also worth mentioning with that is that just because Copilots are available, it doesn't mean that we have to use them. Ideally we will be using them, but we need to work out where our biggest opportunities or biggest issues are, and then work out how we can facilitate what we need to achieve through the use of tailored Copilots.
So you mentioned there the tailored Copilots. What do you mean by tailored Copilots? And how can we use that to maybe encourage some businesses? I think there's a nervousness in some businesses we talk to about using AI. So is that kind of leading them down that tailored Copilot the way to overcome some of that nervousness?
Yeah, I think if I just jump back to the introduction and that Spotify AI DJ, that it's obviously a fantastic capability, but I have unwittingly given it the wrong information to make its decisions, and so it's not wrong, but it's also not right for what I needed it to do. So for me, it's a similar sort of situation, that we need to have the right generative AI capability for the scenario that we want to use it within. And whilst I've spoken about the end user, the IT employee, and the IT leadership use cases, when you actually look at what ITSM organizations or IT organizations, ITSM capabilities or teams are using, they're using three things in the main right now. So you've got the intelligent workflow automation, you've got the virtual assistants for employees, whether you want to call them chatbots or something else, and then you've got the virtual assistants for staff, where we augment what we as individuals know and the skills that we have with those AI capabilities. And increasingly, one of the things we probably won't talk about today is the fact that organizations are finding it far easier and quicker and ultimately cheaper to employ co-pilots than they are to go down the route of where we were, let's say 2 to 3 years ago, when people were saying, yeah, we need to add AI to these ITSM capabilities, and things were being built, and co-pilots. I wanted to use the phrase ready-made solution. You still have to do the work, you still need to put in the time and the hard work and incur some costs, but it's a far quicker route to what you need than trying to build something from scratch.
Yeah, I guess I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was talking about AI and kind of the cost of it, and it's using AI in the right places. So the example was given, do you ask ChatGPT what the opening hours are of the nearest pharmacy, or do you go and just look up online the nearest pharmacy, which you know by name anyway, and say what you open at, and find the opening hours? And I think it took something like 30 times as much processing power back at the data center to ask ChatGPT. So someone's going to take that cost, and that kind of thing's going to happen in enterprises, in business as well. The likes of Microsoft, etc., will be charging for the use of their AI. So it's understanding where you use it. You don't use it to ask, the pharmacy around the corner. Actually, you can walk to it and find out, rather than asking ChatGPT. So it's
and you've probably got to tell ChatGPT some information so it knows where you are.
Yeah.
For instance. So it ends up being a long cut rather than a shortcut in some scenarios. But other things, we can talk about ChatGPT in more detail later. But it can quickly tell you an awful lot of information that you would have previously had to, open 5-10 tabs up in Google and go through skim reading everything, and ultimately then have to knit it all together yourself to end up with something that is hopefully on a par with what ChatGPT is giving you. Having said that though, and I always say I'm an optimistic pessimist, or a pessimistic optimist. It's that way around, I think, is the best way to say it. That whilst I always think the best, I'm always keen to be aware of the things that can go wrong. And again, we're coming back to tailored, I guess, here, aren't we? That when we talk about co-pilots and we talk about ChatGPT, if you've got a co-pilot or co-pilots that are focused on IT service management or another business function and their needs, and also your organization and your history of transactions, it's going to be far more specific and intelligent and valuable than if you were going to ask ChatGPT the same questions. that you can end up with anything. So for instance, if you work in HR and you want to know about case management best practice, you go to ChatGPT for that. You will probably find that it's mixing in information from HR, but maybe from social work type scenarios, police force type scenarios, all the different use cases of case management, and you end up with something that I want to say is unusable. It is usable, but you need to use your intelligence to then go through and pick out what's relevant for you in an HR capacity and what ultimately isn't.
Yeah, so it is about providing that context of your organization rather than the world, and also the data analysis that it can do. As you say, it's the, do you open 6 tabs, or do you just ask ChatGPT or your co-pilot to find it? And you can do that internally within an organization. You don't have to go outside where you're looking for a piece of information and you search through your OneDrive or your SharePoint or whatever. You come to one document that then points you to another document that then points you to another document. And you're just asking a simple question. To be able to ask a co-pilot that question that does all those links and those jumps itself within context, and also knowing that Stephen Mann has access to these documents, but don't, whatever you do, give him information about internal people, personal information. It can do all of that and make it much simpler and get that solution for you quicker. And that's the efficiency of it. Yeah. I suppose we've been talking about sort of in general. I guess at some point, because I'm from SymphonyAI, as it says in the background, I probably have to talk a little about who we are and where we fit in all of this lot. So it just very briefly, as the name suggests, SymphonyAI has AI at the core of everything we do. Our mission is to build the leading AI SaaS company. And just last month, we were recognized by Microsoft as the innovation partner in AI. So, we're definitely, on the way there. It's one of those companies that when you say there's 3,000 plus employees, is obviously surprising lots of people, and the fact that we've got 2,000 plus customers as well. I think maybe if you consider how we're working in multiple divisions, retail with the 15 top grocers, finance working in 200 top banks, industry, media, enterprise, as well as the enterprise IT stuff, which is where our enterprise service management fits in. And because we've got we are part of those organizations, the retail side, that helps with us to become part of enterprise service management. We're not just within the IT teams. So we've got customers we're talking to about companies sort of within the finance industry, and they're doing credit payment systems, but all of their agents, there's got to be checks on them, and there's a process associated with that. So that's where that workflow side of it, you can bring that in and regularly checking that, I know Dick's Hi-Fi, where Stephen gets all of his records from, still exists, or some hardware shop still exists, and the manager of those hardware shops or the owners of them are still the same people. That kind of thing. Those checks need to be done for a credit company to be able to do that. We've also got on the retail side, there's workflow associated with, hey, if a shoplifter comes into the shop, making sure that they're reported and making sure that the police are informed, and you chase up on the police and you deal with your insurers. There's a process associated with that. And that is all things which are kind of fitting in with that enterprise service management here. And that's before you then get to kind of the co-pilots and the AI side of it. And that's where we can, as you were talking about, link in all those knowledge-based things. So we have one of our standard examples, which I'm doing, is we've got HR systems or HR knowledges within our demo. So I can ask it, what's my per diem when I'm going on a trip to Germany? and it's able to look through, find the travel document, work out where Germany fits. It's part of Europe. Yes, we know that, but maybe some people don't. So therefore, or there might be a different thing for Germany to what there is in the UK, but it works that one out. It knows that I'm the one that's asking it, and a sales manager's got to go out and wine and dine all the customers, but Helen doesn't. So Helen has a slightly lower, but it's able to do all these checks and come back with an answer for me, rather than me going through all of our intranet, trying to find that document. Oh, it's not called the travel policy, it's called something else today. It's called the expenses policy, and being able to bring that through. And then the other side of it is, linking in with other tools. So you might have it linked in with HR tools like Workday we've got. And so I could ask it, how many days holiday have I got? Or even actually book a holiday and say, right, I want to book this time off. And it'll come back and say, no, you can't. You can't have 3 months off. You've only got, 2 weeks holiday left this year. So don't forget you've got Christmas as well. But it's able to do that for me, rather than me having to, again, find out another system and log into that and deal with those kind of things. So these are all things that obviously our solution does, but it is that big enterprise IT, just some examples of what we've got within that. So we've talked a lot. We've talked about enterprise service management. We've talked about co-pilots. We've talked about the benefits of using AI. If we were going to take away maybe 3 points from this conversation, what would you say the 3 main things is that you want the audience to kind of remember, in addition to your record system and how you listen to all those kiddies songs for the last few days?
Yeah. I wish I had a record system. I did actually have a record system before lockdown. Everything was in alphabetical order, and then there were just too many, and I can't. Well, I can retrofit the ordering system, but I think I'll need to take a week off work to do it. So in terms of the key takeaways, I think the first thing is that we need to appreciate that the adoption of AI or generative AI and co-pilots in ITSM and wider enterprise service management scenarios is inevitable, that it's going to happen. And a bit like how we started this, that there's some AI that you use knowingly and some that you use unknowingly. And as we continue to see more capabilities embedded within IT service management tools, or service management tools, as some people call them now, it's going to be used whether you know or want to use it anyway. Plus, on the flip side of that, whether they be customers or employees or end users or whatever you wish to call people, expectations are going up. They're having experiences in their personal lives that they're going to expect in their workplace. So you're going to have those rising expectations, and people are going to expect it, or they're going to expect the better outcomes that can come from it. So I think it's important to start with generative AI now, if you're not already doing so, no matter how small that start is, that you don't want to be having to deal with this from a standing start in a year or even 2 years time. Even worse, that the capabilities are there now, and there's a lot that can be learned from what's already available. The second thing, and I think this is something that we speak about a lot, that whilst we talk about generative AI as a technology thing, for want of a better phrase, our use of it has to be business driven. And I think we touched on it earlier on, that when we talk about, or when we're trying to sell generative AI in an enterprise service management context, that the benefits aren't going to be things like, well, it makes incident management better. We have to be talking in terms of business priorities, whether we're looking at efficiency or productivity or experiences or growth or cost reduction or decision making, scalability, all of these things, that's where we should be placing the opportunity of generative AI and co-pilots. And then the third thing, And I guess we're doing it already by talking about the two things, enterprise service management and co-pilots hand in hand. The danger is, and we often do this in an IT, this is a gross generalization, unfortunately, we often do it in an IT context that, some people are looking at this, some people are looking at that, some people are looking at something else, and they're all working to improve IT and then business operations and business outcomes. But we need to avoid looking at generative AI in isolation, that it needs to sit, not only in the ITSM or IT space, but in that enterprise service management or digital transformation opportunity. And it also needs to be against a backdrop of, better productivity or improved experiences or greater value generation, that we need to try and morph all this together. It makes it more complex. But ultimately, I'd like to think that you will end up with a better outcome or outcomes from taking that more holistic approach to the opportunity of generative AI than if you were just looking at, can we stick it here? Can we stick it there? Can we stick it something else? That we need to tie everything together and, find the perfect mix or blend that will ultimately make our organization better than it was, and ideally better than the competition.
That was really good, and I like that end thing. It's almost in that, back at the very beginning, you were saying how I asked when you last used AI, and you were saying, well, there's AI intentionally used and AI you unintentionally use, and I think that's what we want in our business life, that we don't stop and think, let's use AI for this. We just say, let's use that tool, and whether it's got AI in it or not, it's not something we stop and think about. It's just part of it. It's just where it is. So.
Yeah, I normally draw the analogy to, I'm showing my age here, when webmail first appeared, and you would talk about webmail, and now it's just email. It's a similar sort of thing, that the technology comes in, it improves, but the technology terminology, it disappears. You just talk about probably what you were talking about before.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's really great to talk to you. Insightful. You've clearly got lots of experience, lots of ideas. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you to the audience for listening. If they have any more questions, please reach out to me or reach out to us at SymphonyAI, and look forward to the next one of these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.